Started out on Friday night just thinking about all fear being gone. In your presence, all fear is gone. Bring us back to the place that we began, Jesus. Father, bring me back to the place constantly of being like a child, bring me back to the place of transformation and change and illumination. Bring me back to the place where I have wonder again. And I started by just telling this little story. And many of us know the story, of course, of Noah. And I love to tell the kids these stories because in the Bible, and what I've learned is if I read the Bible to my kids, they find it quite boring. They often will say to me when I'm reading stories out of the Bible to them, they'll say, "Excuse me, Daddy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when are you going to tell us a story before we go to bed?" And I always say, "Well, I'm reading you a story." And they say, "Oh, okay." All of a sudden I got it. They don't want me to read it to them. They want me to tell it to them. It's different to tell them than it is to read it, isn't it? In fact, most of the Bible was just told. Well, thank God that we have it written down. I mean, we were talking about it downstairs. Think about this. Scribes wrote down and wrote down and wrote down. This was before the printing press. They wrote and they wrote, and they were so committed to those stories. Thank God for those scribes. We don't even know their names. They never even put their names next to it. They wrote down and wrote down and wrote down all these stories. And when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found that those scribes this is through the Dark Ages, through all of this, had been so committed to writing down every word that every word would be the same. That literally when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, there were like little words that were missing. Like only little words here and there. A few little words. Like words like ands and buts and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Nothing huge. That's how committed they were. Just every day of their life, they wrote and wrote and wrote. And now we have these stories. But my kids, they kind of like reading, but they love it when I tell them the story. So I have to saturate myself in the story and then memorize it in such a way that I can tell it to them, So I came in one day and one evening, and I had been saturating myself in the story of Noah, and I was getting to the part where I said, "Hey guys, for 40 days and 40 nights, God saw evil on the earth, and he saw evil in the heart of man. Even from the day of their youth, he saw evil in the heart of man. And he decided that he was just going to, make a big flood. And it's interesting. So it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and my son Samuel, he said to me, he said, "I wonder what it looked like from outer space. I wonder what it looked like from outer space, Daddy, when the earth was full of water." I said, "That's an awesome question. Hey, let's do that. Let's close our eyes and let's imagine that we're in outer space and we're looking at the earth full of water." And so we did it. And we got to this place that I said, "Sam, it's like the earth is like filled almost all the way up to the top, except at the top there I see the little boat." Hey, why don't you do it with me? Close your eyes. Those of you that aren't sleeping. Close your eyes and just imagine. And there's the earth full of water up to almost the top, and at the very top there's a little space for that little boat. And there's that little boat floating around. I said, "That's cool, isn't it, Sam?" Sam said, "Yeah, that's cool." "Emma, you see it?" "Yeah, I see it." "Wow. Neat." That's Noah and the ark and all the animals. There they are. They're on the ark. So we went to bed after that, and I got up early in the morning. I was on a plane flight going to minister, and I texted Al or called Al and had asked him, maybe what else should I talk about to these young guys and girls at this place? And he said, I think you should talk about the temptations of Jesus. And so I said, okay. So I went into the temptations of Jesus, and I started studying it, and I was just asking for new revelation and just maybe new stories and new applications in my own life of the temptations of Jesus, so that I could be transparent and open, share the story with them. And as I'm reading it, I come across those words, 40 days and 40 nights. And right away when I came across that, all of a sudden I looked back and I saw 40 days and 40 nights of the flood. And then all of a sudden I went back to it and I started reading through it, and I saw, it's amazing. If you read chapter 5 and chapter 8, you see that there was evil before the flood. And God says, when he's giving the promise that he'll never destroy the earth again by water, he says, and I looked, and behold, there was evil in the heart of man, even from their youth. I grew up in the church. I seriously have always thought that God eradicated evil. That was the purpose of the flood. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the way it started out, but he didn't eradicate evil. Evil still existed. And I thought, well, then why the flood? And why 40 days and 40 nights? And why 150 days did the water stay? And all of a sudden, it was like, I heard revelation come to my heart. Well, that's when I was tested. And he showed me the picture of that boat on the water, and he showed me I could have just flipped it over. And I would have never had to hurt again. I'd have never had to feel rejection again. I'd have never had to feel pain again. I could have just flipped it over. Think about that song, Brother. Think about being in a table full of strangers. We are eternal. Everything we do is eternal. But, seriously, if you think about it, think about it. Here's a table full of strangers. Here's your brother. Here's the body of Christ worldwide. We can kind of live our lives as though whole bodies, whole pieces of Jesus' body don't exist. Can't we? There are certain places I'm sure that I can go in denominations in Christianity that want to pretend like the Pope Benedict doesn't exist. Or certainly maybe isn't even a Christian. I could go places and find Orthodox people that don't believe that Catholics are Christians. I could find Catholics that don't believe Orthodox people are Christians. I could find Pentecostals that don't believe Baptists are Christians. Isn't it amazing? It's like we put them all on the boat and decided to flip it over. And then all of a sudden we find them at the table of the Lord. Often when we're lost. Often when we're broken. Often when we're down. Oh, that's the best time to see them there. When you don't know where you're going and you're totally lost and you're totally broken. And then all of a sudden, you're the AG guy and Mr. Baptist comes and bails you out. Then we're all like, oh, thank you, brother.